for the young people that are watching you right now and are just learning maybe about your father's legacy, you talked a lot about the division that we are feeling in our country right now. How can they move forward and try to overcome that feeling of the divisiveness that we hear so much about and your father fought against?
I think that Dad unmistakably was known for his discourse. And I think that we spoke ad nauseum about the fact that our generation, Gen Zers, Gen Alpha, millennials have the responsibility to remain in discourse with one another. Because if we're not in proximity to one another, we can't solve the nation's crises at this time. So I think I speak on behalf of Dad that we are urgently called to continue discourse and to remain in conversation. Because our proximity is what's going to keep us moving forward in this time. He's always been proximal to all of you, proximal to all of us, and that's the work that our generation is required to do moving forward.
One last question.
Let me associate myself with what Ashley had to say, but let me also be candid because I'm old enough to remember, along with Santita and Jonathan, all of it. The caricature that you've created as a media of who our father is not the reality of who we know him to be. So what's happening now on social media is a more accurate depiction of the work of Jesse Jackson, and it's happening and occurring without you. That's the truth. Because institutional media has historically controlled the narrative of who Jesse Jackson is. You've made him to be more controversial than he is, than he was.
Okay.
You've made him less multinational than he is. You've tried to make him someone from a side of town and not universal. Today, the King of England has issued a statement about the life of Jesse Jackson and its importance. One newspaper is hung up on how many mayors he confronted. All of them were small by comparison to Jesse Jackson. He knew as they came and went that he was the constant. And our community could count on that. And so again, the caricature of who you think he was compared to the reality of the education campaign that is taking place independent of you is what's taking place. And as that figure begins to emerge in contemporary thinking, I'm confident that the people, my mother said it this way, history is going to be far kinder to Jesse Jackson than the life that he lived.
Good everything.
Good everything. Jesse Jr. is saying what the elders should say.
You know what's wild about that? I hadn't watched that full clip, and we had a little brief conversation. That was the exact entry point. I swear, alignment. I can't even make it up. I can't. At this point, we need to just know that there's something going on, and we're just going to be obedient to it. But I wanted to ask you this, and I wanted to ask you off mic, because what I don't want to bring into this public sphere is nonsense. Ever.
Well, we swim in nonsense. We have silly folks like Stephen A. Smith thinking they can run for president. We're gonna end all of it. So yeah, we whether we talk about it publicly or not, it is the cesspool in which we swim. It has reduced us to a race of children. So we have to address it.
Okay, all right. Because I was going to ask you, like, when is it appropriate to talk? Ashley was one of the first voices that we heard.
That's right.
When do we talk about the fullness? And then what Jesse Jackson Jr., those were his children that we saw. It was Yusuf, Jonathan, Jesse Jr., Santita, who's the oldest, and Ashley, who's the youngest, who were at the podium. And you think about a man who, to them, he's daddy, and that's how they refer to him. I didn't see a whole lot of the negotiation for hostages in the coverage of him. I didn't see a whole lot of the teeing up of all of the Black elected officials. You talked about it, of course, on Urban V Mornings, but you have momentum of memory and you read. So you were able to bring so much into the conversation that by the time we got to 3 o'clock, I didn't have to. Y'all listen. I don't have anything to add.
That's why we're a team. And we all work together. That's right.
And it was
That's
wonderful
right.
driving around listening to you come in with Sean and Renee on the day that it happened, which was
Oh yeah. Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad she asked me to. That was good.
And here we are having a discussion, and then I saw a bunch of clips running on social media, and there was Hosea Williams, that clip, which I've seen before. And I was like, that's how we rolling. And so I wanted to ask you, Dr. Carr, like when is it appropriate? Is it ever, like we have to address fully, but I always look at people like, what do they do? Jesse Jackson did things that we can learn from, that we can borrow from, that we can grow from. There's a blueprint and a way in which he engaged with power that we can take. The man, whatever he did in his personal life, however he rolled in that way, they ain't got nothing to do with us, in my opinion. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. I mean, here we are in 311.
Wow.
And of course, this is our third session in Blackest History Month. And you never know when somebody is going to make transitions. So this doesn't alter the trajectory as much as enhance it, because we have a certain responsibility. And we're going to do that today to the best of our ability in this short period, which is reflect on a number of things that I haven't heard anywhere, which, and the irony is they are the things that should be talked about at this point, but they haven't been talked about anywhere. And that's precisely because in a silly-minded society like the one we're in now, where that silly-mindedness has been cultivated. This isn't a commentary on our capacity. It's a commentary on where we are under. It's a commentary on the perpetual assault we're under. Even as we saw yesterday, I guess Paramount now says it has cleared a hurdle with the Department of Justice, the consigliere, and the fake mafia over there, saying that there's no barrier in terms of monopoly for them to swallow Warner whole. But no, you come on back. I'm not going into it right now. I'm trying to answer your question. I'm saying, but because of that, we have been cultivated as people to think about individuals as avatars. That's why someone who is excellent at self-promotion and converting celebrity into financial remuneration, like Stephen A. Smith, could say something utterly stupid like, I'm considering running for president. Because we've converted celebrities into avatars. And so we look at Jesse Louis Jackson, and anytime you have an avatar, you're looking for flaws, because it's like playing a video game. You're trying to beat up the avatar back and forth.
But we have an avatar as president. We have a
in many ways, absolutely.
Argument that you can't, say I'm running for president. Like anybody at this point, this is our president. It's like,
well, this is the president. In fact, Haki, I pulled a book off the shelf. Haki Mahabudi published a book during the first Trump presidency called Not Our President. I wrote a chapter for the book. And so we had to be crystal clear. That's why every time Lamont says, we ain't doing nothing. And you can say we, and you can go with them, but I'm not with them. This is a very key point we have to make. And, in order to earn that, we have to do something about it, the we who oppose it. But I'm saying that to say that, and thank you, by the way, for the reminder and the corrective that, Santita is the eldest child. I was thinking about Jesse as the eldest boy. And I'm just thinking about that as the oldest and as a boy. You talk about my daddy, and they all had certain ways. And I thought, from the eldest to the youngest, they've done and have been doing a remarkable job. Yes. Even just, and their mother doesn't have to do anything. We were, I asked the question Thursday night and we were rolling, and I guess this is the question we'll all see answered, although I suspect it's going to be answered in multiple ways. My first question was about the minister. Hopefully he'll be able to attend in person at least one of the rituals now that they've expanded to go to DC. And then can you imagine the South Carolina legislature, those racists?
When you said that yesterday, I was like, where they put the Confederate flag at?
Absolutely.
On purpose. I put that there on purpose.
Yeah. But it's a testament. It's a testament to him.
It is.
It's a testament. Yeah.
What he said, the King of England.
Right. And not only the King of England, a lot of other people who are much more significant to that again, whose voices aren't being lifted and heard because they are invisible even to us in our governance formations, the National Council of Black Lawyers, the National Council of Negro Women. I'm talking about the Black institutions where the elders in those institutions were comrades with Jackson through the 60s and 70s. None of that is being covered. But anyway.
No, but that's why I spent my 3 hours
Yes.
listening to people, because our audience on SiriusXM is so vast, and these people. So we had a firefighter call up who talked about how Jesse Jackson fought for them, to have Black firefighters, negotiated that contract when they were going on strike, and negotiated 49% of Chicago firefighters had to be Black, and stories that we never would have heard. An Asian person, talking about how he fought for, like how he would just show up and fight for people. There was a protest somewhere. Here comes Jesse Jackson. And it wasn't chasing the microphone, because it wasn't what we're in right now where people are chasing clout. But it was interesting to hear from so many people who this man's life, because he lived, changed the trajectory of their lives. And that's why it's important that we talk to everyday people and not pedestalize and immortalize folk who are just regular ass people. The regular people that's the answer, right? That's right. Move forward. So it was beautiful listening to our audience.
Absolutely.
Share their thoughts.
But I think that's why today I think we should carry, if we can, as much as we can, some of that energy that you opened yesterday into today, and let people in the Mbagi and Nubia, the chat and YouTube, if they have things to say, people should share, because that really is the story. Jesse Jackson is an avatar, but we'll come to we'll talk about what it means in a minute. But you initially led with the old clip that is, and I won't say old in that sense, with the clip of Hosea Williams talking about the assassination of his friend and brother Martin King, and criticizing Jesse.
And let me just say, for people who know Portia Williams, his granddaughter, because she was an Atlanta housewife, and they don't know Hosea Williams, they probably shouldn't be sharing something. If you know Portia Williams and you don't know Hosea Williams,
that's right.
You know Portia Williams more than you know Hosea Williams.
Hosea Williams, right. Well, that's a race of children. We've been cultivated that way. Because that is how mass commercial news, entertainment, media has been able to decentralize, not decentralize. Yeah, it's decentering too. I'm just pulling up the Nubia and Boggy over there on a separate device so we can see. So I can kind of see what people are saying. That's a direct result of being under perpetual assault, and it's also a direct result of the perpetual attack on independent Black institutions, including the Black press, Black media. And I don't just mean Black or Black-owned media in the sense that it's good to have ownership. I'm talking about a certain trajectory and message, something we're going to come to in a moment. And again, being very grateful here on the 21st of February and inviting folks to share the conversations that we have weekly, but this one perhaps a little bit even more than you might normally take an inkling to do, a notion to do. Because Jesse Jackson is a point of entry. And as you say, all over social media, and I've seen it everywhere. And not only have we both seen that many times, if you do just, a little bit of listening, if you know any elders from that era who were involved, and of course, Hosea Williams is an excellent book on Hosea Williams. It kind of goes through his history. Hosea Williams, who with James Baldwin, and when you see the documentary, heard it through the grapevine, when Baldwin makes his first quote unquote trip to the South and interviews Hosea Williams there in Atlanta, and Hosea Williams accuses his comrades and colleagues in the civil rights movement, the names we all know, of basically betraying their work in the 1960s by moving toward a kind of petty bourgeois, elite Black class politics that left out the poor. Then you know that it's no surprise that Hosea Williams would be very critical of Jesse Jackson, who as a younger man at that point, 26 years old, wore a turtleneck with the blood of Martin King on it for consecutive days and kind of advanced himself as the heir apparent to Martin King. And, there's plenty of room for criticism, for opinion. And I don't think any of that is unwarranted. I think what makes it difficult in a moment like this is because it is not surrounded by everything else. And when people don't study, when we don't, as you say, really acquire and curate and tend and nurture the momentum of memory, something like that, which is a huge thing, becomes outsized in a way that is corrosive when it's not surrounded by everything else. This was Jesse Jackson's temperament. In many ways, his gift was also his curse. Jesse Jackson was outsized gifted. He was gifted in any number of ways that many of us are not gifted. And he lent those services to the advancement of humanity. And that is the gift. At the same time, these are the kind of people that can ruffle people's feathers because, and for them, and I can't speak in a complete way of understanding, but I think I'm close enough to be. There are moments when you just, come on, y'all, let's, just let me do it. Because wait, you got to get out of the way. So Ralph Abernathy, that's Martin Luther King's friend. They faced death together in Montgomery. They was together in Mississippi when them white boys were standing behind him and say, yeah, the killers of Schwerner and Goodman Chain behind you. So of course Ralph was supposed to take over. But now King is dead, and Jesse's like, man, I'm not going to disrespect, but we got him. So there's that. And it is almost apocryphal among the friends and family and people who know Jesse Jackson and all his comrades. Dr. King could hold order on Jesse, but now King is gone. Ain't none of the rest of y'all hold order on Jesse. So either you gonna work with Jesse or they sent him to Chicago for Breadbasket. Within several years, it's PUSH. I can't go. And he asked Jack O'Dell, who we're going to talk a lot about today, to come with him. This elder, the Andrew Young and Dorothy Cotton, like, could you come back to SCLC? We need you. But when Jesse leaves, he said, I need Jack O'Dell with me. So Jack O'Dell becomes the chief of staff for PUSH. All of this, none of this is going to be discussed in the press because they don't know it. It's not an Abby Phillips book in any meaningful way, the most recent book, because you don't know. And you're not in the genealogy like that. And that's fine. It's not a criticism, but go ahead.
How do we, because this is the space in Class With Carr where we set the drumbeat of how we move through these moments, right? You talked about Hosea Williams being an elder, which put him in a position to have to say things, right? But he's an elder, so he has the authority to say that. But that's a nuanced conversation that if you don't know all of the backstories, then you're not really digesting it. You're just out here throwing out videos out of context.
Of course.
Here's what I thought, and then you erase everything somebody has done. So you say we're a race of children. We're a nation of children.
A race of children.
Children.
I'm talking specifically about Black people, which is a subset of the country of children called the United States of America. That's why the United States, one of the reasons it's a laughing stock around the world, because we are so deeply and severely diseducated that when we open our mouths, the ignorance is inescapable. And Black people, unfortunately, have fallen into that mess.
This primarily because the real race of children beat our parenting out of us 400 years, but we're not going to get it. Perhaps. So how do we grow up is my question.
Well, I think it's easy. It's easier than might appear at the first glance. I don't attribute the maladies we face now in terms of the critical mass of the sickness to our captivity. It's funny. Last night, late in the night, I was reading a children's book on Black cowboys. I just got, it's an older book, but this is one I didn't have. And those children's books rely heavily on pictures. And I was looking at a photograph from the 19th century, late 19th century, of a family of African people in Kansas, homesteaders. And of course, if anybody who has ever seen the play or read the play, Flying West, Pearl Clegg, I got a chance to see the play when I was out in Chicago doing some work with our friend Kim Delaney, Dr. Delaney, and it happened to be playing. So we all went to go see Flying West. And of course, that's about one of those all Black towns like Nicodemus, Kansas out there. So, so I was looking at this photograph and it was about 3 or 4 Black men One of the black men on one end of the photograph had a dog in the chair, and he had the dog up, so the dog looking at the camera too. And it was a sister, black woman, on the other end, and she had a baby in her lap. And behind them, there were two sod houses. You know, those of you of a certain age probably saw or heard or remember the white version of those families. Laura Ingalls' Little House on the Prairie. These black people, though. The calico dresses, you know, they got their Sunday best. They taking this photograph. And the thing that struck me was that everyone had a look on their face that was serene, but also very focused. You know, those pictures that we take. Even the baby. This was an arm baby. This baby, I would suspect, was not more than 6 months old. And what always strikes me about those photographs is that when you see them, you're reminded of the purposefulness of our people, which matches with the historical record that we are able to have through mouth to ear history. And then, of course, from people who go through the archives and write things down. And it also strikes me how strikingly similar that photograph is to photographs of continental Africans and Africans from Central and South America from the period. We're talking about, 1890, 1880, 1900, 1910. You look at, I don't care whether it be the dock workers in Senegal or the people at the port in Lagos in Nigeria, when it became Nigeria, or Africans in Panama working on the canal, or in Jamaica or Trinidad. And then you look at these Africans from South Carolina, in this case, Kansas or New York, and they got the same look. I don't put this on our captivity. No, this happened to us in the last couple of generations. Slavery didn't do this to us. Slavery attempted to do this to us, but it was our governance formations, our structures that allowed us to project forward, that allowed, for example, a young man whose mother got pregnant with him from the next door neighbor to grow up to become Jesse Lewis Jackson when he said at the 1988 Democratic National Convention, in what is, as far as I'm concerned, Martin was talking about this the other night, and I agree with him wholeheartedly there. Everybody else who has ever spoken at a national political convention where there's a audio visual record of what they said in terms of the major political parties in this country, everyone else who has ever spoken at those conventions is fighting for second place, a distant second place to the speech Jesse Lewis Jackson gave in Atlanta in 1988 when he says, "I see y'all there in those wheelchairs. I know you had to work a little harder to get here and people be looking down on you." And he's like, "No, they shouldn't look down on you. You're here just with us." He said, "I see y'all over there." He said, "Some of y'all say, look at Jesse. He's with the big people." He said, "Yeah, you don't know my story. You know what I'm running for, but you don't know where I'm running from." And he tells the story. He said, "For the first 13 years of my life, my name was Jesse Burns. My grandmother gave me her name." And then of course there's a so-called stepfather. But my point is this: slavery didn't do this to us. Our captivity, our trafficking did not do this to us, because our family structures, however under perpetual assault they were, found some form of governance and ways of knowing that allowed us to surround children who may not have the biological parents together, but have a community that raised them. Jesse Lewis Jackson came out of a unvarnished African governance formation, regardless of what the social structure had tried to do to us. So the 1940s, where he was born and raised, 1941, the 1920s and 30s, where our parents were born and raised, despite the perpetual assault of a racist social structure, this capitalist social structure, we had governance formations that were able to create a space so that by the time Jesse Jackson matures into a star high school football player, he could project forward to the University of Illinois, where it's like, yeah, I don't know about this quarterback business. You know, that play. And so he can come back to the East Coast, born and raised in South Carolina, but then North Carolina A&T, where he had family. He had family who had lived across the street from the campus there in Greensboro. And in fact, during part of the time when his mother was pregnant with him, to get out of Greenville and kind of make it more manageable for her and for the family, she stayed in North Carolina. And so when he comes to North Carolina A&T to go to school in 1960, there's a new president there, one of the titans, Baba Jeremiah Wright, who, of course, Jeremiah Wright was heavily influenced by this brother, the great Samuel DeWitt Proctor out of Virginia Union. Baba J talks about going north to Philly with him in the car and back and forth. When you hear Jeremiah Wright, part of that you hear is, of course, in addition to his father and so many others, is Samuel DeWitt Proctor, the great minister. But Samuel Proctor was the president of North Carolina A&T when Jesse Jackson decided he wanted to come back east and go to a place he had some connections to that, at least according to a lot of the writers, Marshall Frady and them, he says, that's where his mom wanted him to go in the first place. So he shows up and Samuel Proctor tells the story of how the registrar came in the president's office, his office, because, HBCUs can do that and say, hey, man, there's this kid at the registrar's office that the registrar is saying paperwork is not in place, so he's not going to admit him. And the registrar says to President Proctor, hey, man, we don't let this guy leave. You need this guy. And Proctor is so overwhelmed with this guy, with the registrar's enthusiasm. In fact, he said the registrar was a kind of smallish man, kind of round. He said, here comes this short, fat dude. Just, you gotta. He said, hey, hold on. Proctor tells the registrar, no, it wasn't the registrar. It was the PR guy. It was the guy who was over public relations for North Carolina A&T. He's the one talking about this. It was the registrar that was like, hey, your paperwork's not in place. So Proctor tells the director of public relations at North Carolina A&T, go down to the registrar, tell him to admit Jackson, then come back and tell me why I did it. And that's how Jesse Jackson ends up at North Carolina A&T, where he becomes an honor student, where he becomes a star on the football team, the quarterback of the CIAA champions, and ultimately becomes the president of the student body. This after that first sit-in incident at the library of South Carolina. But when he comes in 1960, that's the same year, of course, John Lewis and Marion Barry and Diane Nash and James Bevel and of course, the new book is out now. Jim Lawson's biography is out now, published posthumously. Of course, it just came out. And you think about all the people we've talked about over the years here in class, and that we should all know that are doing what they're doing in the so-called Nashville movement. So by the time Jackson, 5 years later, encounters Martin King as part of the Selma work, he has not only been suffused in the movement before he ever showed up at North Carolina T, because we know February 1st, 1960, the A&T 4 sit at that Woolworth. Jesse Jackson is prepared for that moment of service by coming through a governance formation that has prepared him, including the church. Classmates and others who were on the campus in North Carolina T talk about going past his dorm room and hearing gospel music. The highway QCs, which your brother brought up yesterday on the rest said, man, you talking about the highway QCs. You talking about Sam Cooke, brother. Yes, sir. They hear that music coming out of Jesse's dorm room because he was raised in that. So, social structure will say, oh, he was born from a broken home. Don't do that. Go to the 1988 speech where he walks through some of that history and look at the audience. Michael Brown, the son of Ron Brown, who became the head, of course, of the Democratic National Committee, but was Jesse Jackson's campaign manager at the time. And we'll talk about all this in a moment. I'm just kind of raising this in the context of the question you raised about Hosea Williams. I'm put all this in the context in about 30 seconds. When you pan that 1988 speech, when the audience cameras are going around, Michael Brown was saying, because he was a golfer, he said, I was a kid at the time. I'm going to get Jesse Jackson Church's chicken and bring it back to the hall. I'm going back, And so he says, I'm looking at this, and my father made sure that on that night that Jesse Jackson spoke in Atlanta, that he had what they call it. He said they call it, he had the hall, meaning ain't no Dukakis signs, no other candidate. It's only Jesse people in there. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's true, but there are thousands here. So there are other people who didn't vote for Jesse and ain't going to vote for Jesse, don't want to have Jesse, who are sitting there. But Jackson had them all. You see those white people, you see those faces, you see those white women and those white men who you would think, oh, these are the people who will be against us. And when he's talking about all of them, he said, let me tell you my story, your story. When my name goes in nomination, your name goes in nomination. Ain't that what Ras said? That's what Ras Baraka said when he won the mayorship in Newark. He said, when I become the mayor, we become the mayor, you become the mayor. And all I could think about was his father, Amiri, standing on that podium in Gary, Indiana with Jesse Lewis Jackson at the 1972 Gary Black Power Convention. And thinking about, that's how Ras was raised. He's raised in the notion when if I'm the mayor, you the mayor. Jesse's, if I'm the president, you the president. And he walks through all these various categories of those who clean the bed, empty the bedpans at the hospitals, fold the sheets in the hotel rooms that y'all slept in the night. I'm with them, they're with us. I know you, you know me. Your story is my story. And then he goes in, you can make it, you can make it. I mean, so, Jesse Jackson was so effective in that his signature phrases became caricatures. Man, I slipped on the job at work. I think I hurt my neck. Call Jesse Jackson. People think that's a joke, but the reason that is not a joke, the reason that it became a joke is because it was damn near true. If you wanted justice, call Jesse Jackson. Man, I stubbed my toe on this one. Call Jesse Jackson. In other words, this whole notion. And so keep hope alive. People say, keep hope alive, keep hope alive. Yeah. You know why you say it? Because Jesse said it. And it's funny because even when we think about, I forget who I was. I mean, there's so much in the media now. When you think about the I am somebody, Jesse Jackson didn't write that. Jesse Jackson didn't write that. That I am somebody was created by a brother at Wheat Street Baptist Church. If y'all know Atlanta, if y'all know Auburn Avenue, you know exactly where Wheat Street is. The minister was Reverend William Holmes Borders. William Holmes Borders Sr. wrote the I Am Somebody, but it was Jesse Jackson that made it a delivery system all the way to and through Sesame Street. And it seems kind of corny until you remember if you were a child or someone else at one of the Operation PUSH at Rainbow PUSH building in Southside Chicago. If you were there when that was repeated, then I'm looking at the, look at that. Look, thanks, Jelani. John said Jesse asked us as young people to get behind Operation PUSH. This is what's filling up the chat and YouTube, the Mbangi and Nubia, the people, everyone who remembers. Jesse, you can't fake what Jesse did. In fact, I want to mention this before I keep going, just because I'm thinking about it. This is today's New York Times. We'll talk about Bozo as well, who was trying to do his best imitation of Andrew Jackson by thumbing his nose at the court. And I encourage him in doing that. I'm very, very, very encouraged by what's going on now as this country tears itself to pieces in terms of the federal government, because we might actually be able to build something new. It might not actually be in that. It might be in the arts section. Y'all give me a second here if I can find it quickly. There is, if you know Auburn Avenue in Atlanta, right there, when you leave, like if you're walking out toward Dr. King's house and to Ebenezer Baptist Church in between, no, it might be in the front. It may be in the front section. It might just be going too fast. You will pass the Auburn Avenue Research Library. If you're walking away from town, Auburn Avenue Research Library is going to be on your right. You're going to go up a few blocks, and then you're going to see the Atlanta Daily World, the 100 Black Men of Atlanta on the right. And on the left, you're going to pass the offices of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. You're going to pass Big Bethel, the church. Wheat Street is down there. But you will see, if I can't find it quickly, here it is. Yeah. You'll pass this. This is in today's paper. See the Prince Hall, the Masonic Lodge, where Dr. King and them used to have a lot of meetings? Well, look at this. Isn't this great? On a week, by the way, that we saw what we expected to see, because remember last week, this time, we were talking about Philadelphia, and we knew inevitably that what was going to happen was going to happen. The judge was so pissed off with the injunction. Now, the whole thing has been vacated, and the panels that were taken down are back up now at the President's house in Philadelphia. This is another national parks site. A landmark of Martin Luther King's legacy is being revived. Intense moment for historical sites. An overlooked treasure in Atlanta is restored. Overlooked by who? Because if you go down Auburn Avenue, you've been seeing that fence around. We saw it the last time. Me and Reba went over there because right there where there's a beauty shop, there's a radio station where Dr. King used to broadcast, and it's like a little historical museum. They were cleaning out to restore the place, the owners, and putting it back in. They're going to put everything back in. And that's right. You make a right there on the corner. Right there is where the fence started for this building. This is the Masonic Lodge that is being restored. Right here, you see someone from the National Historical Preservation Trust. You see him here. This brother right here is one of the leaders of the Prince Hall Masons in Atlanta. And this brother right here is over the Martin Luther King Historic District. I've seen this brother many times. You go to Atlanta. So it's not overlooked. Maybe it's overlooked by you, New York Times, but that's fine. Or Rick Rojas. But my point is this. Right in that neighborhood is Wheat Street Church. Wheat Street is where the minister came up with the I Am Somebody. And that's 2 generations before Jesse Jackson started saying it. But because Jesse Jackson said it in the way that he said it, people believed it. It became so powerful that it's almost become a caricature. That is cultural meaning making, but it's also movement and memory. You pass it on through time and space. Now, I went through all of that. Yeah, I'm glad too, Brother Mosby is saying, glad to see that Atlanta has been preserving Auburn Avenue. It absolutely has. And, I should add one other thing to that. Bozo is being kicked in his teeth by the courts all over the place. People are talking about the tariff piece. But as I said, the Philadelphia decision was earlier this week at the district court, and they've appealed. Of course, they have to appeal. White supremacists have to appeal. I want you to appeal. Appeal until your whole being evaporates. Vamoose, son of a. So do that. Please do that. Because you're going to evaporate like steam on a hot summer day in Atlanta. You're going to be gone. And we're going to help you by unveiling the sun that shines in our souls to evaporate your evil like it was never there. Another case, of course, we saw coming out of the Northeast, New Hampshire, the ACLU of New Hampshire, the National American Civil Liberties Union, a coalition of groups, including our good friend Sharif El-Mekki and the folks at the Center for Black Educator Development, won this week in court. They took a jackhammer, the courts did, and said that this dear colleague letter that these racists sent out last February, a year ago, that an injunction was filed, or was asked for and was granted the following month. This dear colleague letter that the Secretary of Wrestling, Linda McMahon, and her racist bosses put out saying that y'all couldn't have DEI and couldn't have certain programs and don't have Black culture centers, all the things they tried to do to terrorize teachers in preschool and kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade and then in every kind of college and all that. That letter, vamoose, it's gone. The courts was like, nah, you don't have the authority to do that. So that letter's gone. The signs are back up in Philadelphia. The tariffs, and we can talk about that for a moment. I'll come back to that in a moment, just in passing, because there's really no need to really go through it. I haven't read the whole 180 pages, but I've read a great deal of it. Clarence Thomas, brother, I don't feel sorry for you. I don't hate you. You're miserable. Clarence Thomas did what he has done so often as he has sat on the bench. He dissented by himself. Now, he also joined the dissent of Beer Kavanaugh, writing for the minority, and the Christian Soldier, Sam Alito, who's got a book coming out, which should be a little disturbing for court watchers, because typically when a Supreme Court justice puts a book out, they're either retired or coming toward retirement. So I would be surprised in the next few months if we don't see this exquisite legal racist. By exquisite, I mean just so committed, 10 toes down to his racism, that he could say something or join an opinion so stupid yesterday as to say that the president is basically a king. If he want to do some tariffs, then he can do them. Alito may retire. They may, fill his seat with somebody half or less his age, because they got a bench. But Clarence Thomas is a miserable piece of work, intellectually, politically. I don't know him. I have really no interest in knowing him. They say everything I've ever heard is say that he's a really nice guy. That's beautiful. You can be a nice guy and a clown, just like you could put some blood from Dr. King's body on your shirt and hope that will help promote the thing that you're the heir apparent, and still do an incredible work, so much so that you're one of the most significant political figures in the last century and in all of U.S. history. And in fact, as your son Jonathan, talking about Jesse Jackson now, said the other day, he said to us, as we were interviewing him when he came on Roland Martin's show on Thursday night, he said, my father was a minister who used politics, not the other way around. That's absolutely right. That's in the spirit of Martin King, who never was a politician. I mean, if Martin Luther King had lived and run for office, would he be Jesse Jackson? I don't think so. And I'm not saying because politically they wouldn't be aligned. I think they would very much be aligned. I'm just saying that different times create different figures. And Jackson had that charisma. Jackson had that combination of intellect, one of the smartest people I've ever seen. And let's talk about in public addresses. I'm talking about, I was out at Operation PUSH. This is about 15, 20 years ago. One of my former students, Sister Michelle, had asked me to come out and be on a couple of panels and just, be in. I was like, yeah, I've been to PUSH before for the annual conference. I want to come. So I was there, we were in our panel talking, and here come Reverend Jackson. He's sitting there in the front row. As we're talking, hashing out what we were there to talk about, he's jumping in, we're having conversation. This man has no notes. And every time I saw Jesse Jackson in an intimate space, like a small group of it, Jackson, he's not going to a notebook. those statistics, the capacity to frame things in a way that makes it so clear for people who haven't done the deep study that he did, always reading, always in dialogue. Man, I don't know that I've ever seen anyone with that level of genius. There are those who have different forms of genius, Jeremiah Wright being one, Theophilo Bingham, Marimba Ani. I started naming them, Charles Blockson. There are different types of genius, Anderson Thompson, Jacob Carruthers, Larry Crow. I mean, there's so many people, but Jackson's combination, Shelby County versus Holder comes down, they kick the teeth out of the Voting Rights Act, and he's in Selma, and he says, Shelby killed Selma. That seems simple till you try. In fact, Cora Masters Berry was saying this the other night as well. She said, because another genius, Marion Barry, say what you want to about him. Oh, but you can't deny the man's genius. She said, my husband and Jesse Jackson were very close, and they would laugh together, eat together, do it. And then one night they were joking and talking. And then Marion was getting on him, talking about, man, you always rhyming. And finally, Jesse got a little lightweight irritated. He said, yeah, you try it. Which really makes the point. People clown Jesse Jackson for rhyming, but you try it. I don't talk about just rhyming. I'm talking about substantive things that say, I need a phrase that's going to make this stick in your head. But it's based on all this other stuff that I say. See, people like that, not only I watch them, I observe them, I'm in dialogue with them. Why? Because that's my temperament. I don't want to make a thing so complicated that you can't understand it. The use of the metaphor. That's why, West Africa, has the saying go, Proverbs are the horse of speech. If you can render a thing simply that is very complicated in a way that people can enter it and then begin to populate that thing with their own nuanced understanding, then you've made a contribution. And so, if people get hung up on Hosea Williams, what he said about Jesse Jackson, right or wrong, and then start debating. No, you've opened your mouth and put your lack of information on display. I think how we will talk about the life and work of Jesse Jackson as a point of entry for 4 generations of movement of Africans in this miserable criminal enterprise. How we talk about Jesse Jackson will be a reflection of what we know and don't know. Will be a reflection of our experience, our understanding, and our ignorance. It won't be a referendum on Jesse Lewis Jackson. It absolutely will not be. So, today I thought we could do, I'm just kind of looking. Yeah, Brother Black, Jackson's mind. I'm telling you. Yeah, Jarvis is saying, talking about Marion Barry. Yeah, Marion Barry was a scientist, chemistry. Coming out of Lemoyne and then going to Fisk for a master's and then completing everything for the PhD at the University of Tennessee except the dissertation and stopped just short so he could go full time into the movement. Marion Barry was a literal scientist. And then you have pieces of men and women who would put Marion Barry's name in their mouth and clown him. They can't even spell chemistry. Oh, but you got some smoke for Marion Barry. No. Anybody got smoke for Marion Barry, let it be Jesse Jackson, and let it be a joke, and let it be over a meal, and let it be with Cora Mastersberry sitting there laughing, and let that keep the ribbing smoke. You know how we do. Like Mago Mike Johnson. You don't want Jesse Jackson lying in state. Fine. In the Capitol Rotunda saying that's now reserved only for presidents. That's fine. John Lewis was on the steps during COVID. We went down there to pay our respects. You can have Jesse Jackson down there. I know you can. But you know what? Why don't, little MAGA Mike, why don't you leave your little Christian grinder porn search lock community in Louisiana and take your ass to a barbershop where maybe your son gets his hair cut. You wouldn't last 5 minutes by the time they get through tearing you up with clowning. Yeah. You walk out there with tears in your eyes, although I imagine you're always crying on the inside, you and Lindsey Graham, because, part of the reason you want to be in proximity to these indefensible hustlers, and if they were associated deeply with Jeffrey Epstein, perverts, is because maybe they make you feel a little bit better about yourself. So I understand, but you better not come in no barbershop, Mike, because you might get a little taste of how we get down when we clowning somebody, and you might not survive very long. So at any rate, so let's think about this in terms of Jesse Jackson. What we saw there from Jesse Jr. is absolutely correct. The press tried forever to do what it did to Jesse Jackson. And it didn't succeed. And it can never recoup what it was at its strength. In other words, it can never do that because now the technology has made it impossible, as Jesse Jr. said quite eloquently and quite directly. The people are defining the relationship. We're doing it right now. We're doing it right now in this space by the thousands and the thousands. People are commenting. Everybody should now give voice to this in this moment because this isn't just a passing of a human being of a moment. This isn't just the transition of one person. This is a marking of a watershed moment. There hasn't been a watershed moment like that. So we were joking and said, who's going to preach the funeral? You know, Al Sharpton is determined. He's more determined probably than Jesse was after Dr. King got said, I gotta, but I hope the minister can offer a few words. I know that Baba Jeremiah is probably going to write something. I mean, there are going to be a lot of people who speak, but, and so I'll give y'all a little bit of a personal reflection, and then we'll go through and then we'll wind up. First time I saw Jesse Jackson, I was at Tennessee State University. We had gone over to, this was 1984, so I was 19 years old and maybe 20. And we had gone to Vanderbilt University to see Jesse. He was on campus there speaking. This is during the 84 campaign. And then we signed up to be volunteers. I was a volunteer in the Jesse Jackson campaign, and I'd already been volunteering to see Jesse. In fact, because I was sophomore class president at Tennessee State, the reason that I had joined the race for class president and then eventually became student body president. But the reason I had done this because I got involved in 84 in politics. So this must have been the fall of 84. So it must have been my sophomore year or my first year because, it was the fall of 1984. And no, it couldn't have been the fall. It must have been the summer of 84. But at any rate, Jesse was, because I got involved in the Jackson campaign. I'll never forget the first meeting I went to, first organizational meeting I went to in 1984 was maybe the fall of 83. No, it must have been early 84. It was Black people. It was white people. It was young people. It was old people. In fact, I think that's the first time I ever sat with a bunch of old white hippies from the 60s. These the old radicals. And they was like, this is Nashville, Tennessee in the early 80s. And so I saw the kind of multiracial coalition that was backing Jesse Lewis Jackson. And it was going to be my first vote in the presidential campaign. So, we went to see Jackson, and Jackson is there at Vanderbilt. And I'll never forget, Jackson said, among other things, he said, if the other candidates had my budget, they could not compete. If I had the other candidates' budget, they could not compete. And everybody, when they caught it, it was a pause, a beat, and then everybody just started cheering, right? I remember Jesse Jackson in a presidential debate. John Glenn and all them were running for president. And a reporter from the Wall Street Journal asked him his position on whether or not if a regime took over in Iran that he didn't agree with, would he use force? And he said, well, it would depend on the context of it. He said, well, what if it was the lady asked him, the reporter, what if it were, and you can look on C-SPAN if you want, all these debates are there. And she asked him, well, what if the leadership there is hostile to the United States, which you support overthrowing the leadership or using force? And Jackson said, if the people in the country voted for them, then we would have to work with them. I believe in diplomacy. I believe in dialogue. But if the people voted for them, then that is the legitimate leader. The lady didn't know what to do. Why? Because her framework is if the United States don't like them, the United States government doesn't like them, you should take them out. Jesse's position was, if the United States don't like them, but the people voted for them, then that's who we're going to negotiate with. Well, that's a problem for white nationalists. That's a problem for white nativists. And it's a problem for blackface nativists who love their master. Slaves without masters. Because you think you got the right to interfere with everybody, or as Dr. King said, to be the policeman of the whole world. And Jackson's like, no. So Jesse Jackson talking to Yasser Arafat. Jesse Jackson going to Syria to get Robert Goodman, as you said, as Jesse said. Jesse Jr. said, and as you said a moment ago, Prof, this diplomacy. Jesse Jackson talking to Yasser Arafat. Jesse Jackson talking to anybody, anywhere. How can he talk to them? Because that's who's there. And people say, well, he was able to get all these people back, get these hostages released. Somebody said, if I was a white person being held somewhere, I want Jesse Jackson. They got me captive. Call Jesse Jackson. Leave Ronald Reagan in the United States. A great deal of that, of course, were these countries embarrassing the United States of America. It wasn't just Jesse's skills of persuasion, although he was hella effective. In fact, what did Jesse Jackson, one of these, maybe it might have been Saturday Night Live one of the times he appeared there and did the monologue. And he said, yeah, I went to see Castro. We didn't talk. He said, if I could have stayed another day, I'd have got him to shave. And everybody started laughing. I mean, Jesse had those persuasive skills, but make no mistake about it. In terms of foreign policies, a lot of this, like Saddam Hussein and them, they're embarrassing the United States by giving them. We ain't giving them to y'all, but we'll give it to Jesse. Anybody got no problem when Muhammad Ali was traveling all over the world in the name of Islam, this beloved figure who y'all hated when he could talk in a way that scared the shit out of y'all and beat up every white man you sent in the ring to defeat him, and all the black people too, and came out with his black power fist in the air and a Nation of Islam hat on. Oh man, that scared you. So, but Jesse was a different problem. If Jesse Jackson had been a white man, he'd been president of the United States twice. He'd have been reelected by a landslide. Jesse Jackson is who racist-ass white people want you to believe Ronald Reagan was, when in fact Ronald Reagan was basically Donald Trump right now, just with a better PR team around him. Both of them so severely diminished mental capacity that they shouldn't even be allowed nowhere near a booth to sign up to run for nothing. Jesse Jackson, you can't compare those men to Jesse Jackson. You just can't compare them. So anyway, we went in to see Jesse speak. And I'll never forget the other thing I'm going to mention, which connects this. As we're going into Memorial Coliseum at Vanderbilt, there was a table outside with some black students, our age, college students. And they said, y'all going to see Jesse? Yeah. I said, y'all need this too. What? Do y'all know about Farrakhan? Who is Farrakhan? Is some Asian? They're from the South, right? Now, my mama, leaving KW Baptist Church in South Nashville, coming down 12th Avenue South, would stop at the Nation of Islam to get whiting fish since I was a little boy on the way from church coming back home. But I didn't know the Muslims like that. I'd seen copies of Muhammad speak since I was a kid, the nation all over the South, all over the country. But I did not know Louis Farrakhan. So none of us did. Who was Farrakhan? So they had the buttons, they had the papers. Okay, so let's pick this up. Oh, man. This is, remember, they would not, federal government would not give Jesse Jackson Secret Service protection. The Nation of Islam was secret, the fruit of Islam. Probably some of the MGT too, Muslim girls in training around. But the fruit was the visible security for Jesse Louis Jackson. Then the feds is like, give him protection. Farrakhan. They neighbors, if y'all know where that is, West Side Chicago, they neighbors in that neighborhood. Barack Obama was too. Story for another day. But the point is this. Farrakhan, I hope the minister is able to travel there. Because Jesse preached everybody's funeral. And on a couple of them times he preached, Farrakhan preached too. Think Rosa Parks in Detroit, for example. Very important to understand. So the transition of Jesse Louis Jackson is a very important moment. That's the first time that I saw Jesse Jackson. The second time that I saw him, he came to campus, Tennessee State. I was student body president by that time. In fact, it's our yearbook from that year. It's Tennessee State, the Tennesseans, 75th anniversary. If I can find this picture quickly, I'll show it to y'all. But if I can't find it, I won't tell it. But I can't show you the picture. But actually, I should be able to find it quickly. Jesse Jackson he came to campus because we're fighting because, of course, they're talking about they want Tennessee State to become 50% white by 1992. That's what sent me to law school. We want to fight in the courts. We got to stop this foolishness. And in that work, here we go. There's a picture. He came. That's my office behind him. That's me sitting there with that little smile on my face, a little skinny black boy with a tie. There's Jesse, Stephanie Vick there, Stacy Hall, next to him, and my man Carl Batson. All of us there. Now, most of these people are grandparents. But there's Jesse in the middle because Jesse came to campus and it swing through. This is 86. So it's right between the 84 and 88 campaigns. But Jackson, hey man, call Jesse Jackson. Why? The assault on black colleges. Geyer versus Alexander in Tennessee. the Ayers versus Fordyce case in Mississippi. In Louisiana, they want to merge black colleges. They want black colleges to decrease their number of black students. They're going to let 2 or 3 black people into law school at the University of Tennessee, and they want Tennessee State to become 50% white. So the courts, Jesse was going around the country, took on that as well. And he stopped on our campus. He met with us. He's sitting, we talking. And then he said, we're going to have a press conference. And he said, I support these students. Hey, man, that was Jesse. That was Jesse. Look at the people filling up the Mbongi with these memories. Yeah, that was, oh yeah, I had a tie. You won't never see that again. So anyway, it's a long time ago. But, you know, and not just in a blow through. Lights come on, he's Jesse Jackson. Lights off, sitting in the room, that genius, that connection. You know, I was a student in North Carolina A&T, and then connecting, you know, this is what happens when, this is why, is everybody here registered to vote? Okay, you got your people registered to vote. This is why it transfers. This number of people are in college. This number of people, 40% of the people who go to college, black people who go to college in this country graduate from black colleges like Tennessee State. In fact, I remember when he started talking about, you know, down the street, Fisk University, but Fisk, Meharry, Tennessee State, American Baptist Theological Seminary, my friend John Lewis, let me tell you about it. And then he switched back. He says, do you know the earning potential of a black person between the time that they graduate from college and now is such and such? And if you contrast that with it blows your mind, gives you something to aspire to. Y'all, I agree with Jesse Jr. Y'all not gonna clown Jesse Jackson to those of us who knew what he meant and who saw him, knew him, interacted with him. And I won't go through all the times I saw Jesse Jackson. I'm going to mention 2 more times and then we'll keep going. The next watershed moment was the '88 campaign. I was in law school by then in Columbus, Ohio, Ohio State. Jesse, in 1984, sent a shockwave through the political establishment because Jackson, of course, represented this groundswell. And something Mike said the other night, Michael Brown, Ron Brown's son, said Jesse brought his voters with him. It's very important to understand this. It's a very important point he was making. See, there are 2 types of political, there's 2 types of capital. There's private capital and political capital. 2 types of resources, 2 types of coinage, if you want to talk about it in that way. Political capital is voters. You got voters. I'm coming to the table with 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 20 million voters. These are people who wouldn't otherwise be at the ballot box. So what the Jackson campaign did, drawing from the strategy of the 1960s and 70s, we're going to talk about that in a moment as I kind of bring this back around to the broader context. The Jackson work, the Rainbow Push Coalition, and all of the affiliated organizations that moved through that, leveraging the momentum that had been won with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which takes you back to the 15th Amendment, which is why Ketanji Brown Jackson, in the tariff case, wrote separately, even though she concurred with the conclusion, John Boy Roberts, trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube. I'm sorry, John Boy, you blew up the damn Supreme Court with Citizens United, beginning with that, my little downturned friend. Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote separately in the tariff case yesterday to say we need to look at the legislative record. What was the legislative intent? What was Congress's intent when they did the International Emergency Economic Powers Act? She was the one that wrote separately, just like Clarence Thomas was saying, basically let him do what he wants. But I'm saying all that to say this. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, now we're waiting on the Voting Rights Act case, which may come out next week or the following week. Word on the street is coming out sooner rather than later. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 draws on and is anchored in the 15th Amendment. So seizing on the momentum of the Voting Rights Act, which is to help implement the 15th Amendment, of course, that voter registration became a huge thing after 1965. You saw these black elected officials begin to be elected. And after the Jackson campaign of '84, it explodes.
Can you pause there for a second? Because the way you broke that down on Urban View Mornings and brought it to view of where we are right now, because a lot of people are like, oh, the midterms or Texas, win because of XYZ. And I never considered it until you mentioned it. But Jesse Jackson brought people into the electorate that would never vote. And all I'm thinking about every day are the 90 million people that sat out. And I keep thinking about New York. Mamdani won not on the established voters, on people who would never vote.
That's right.
And that's because Jesse Jackson paved the way.
There it is.
So thank you.
Prof. No, thank you. That is the exact point. That is the exact point. And as I said, Jackson is an avatar. It's not his genius alone, but his face, his capacity to bring the focus in, and through that fulcrum of Jackson, then reveal everything behind him like a fulcrum. Everybody out here looking, they looking at Jesse, and then past Jesse, you see everybody else, Jack Odell and Martin Luther King, Dorothy Cotton, Septima Clark, filtered through Jackson. And now you can see that's Mamdani, who would say, sitting there in the hella cold, getting sworn in at Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders worked on Jesse Jackson's campaign. And Bernie Sanders said, with Jesse Jackson sitting in the front row, I was watching a speech, I forget where it was, he said, Jackson. But then what Bernie Sanders didn't say, which he should have said, why would he say it though, is that when you see Jackson, you see all them people that made Jesse Jackson. The Mamdani strategy is the black strategy. Bring the people to the poll who would not otherwise come to the poll. That's exactly right. So Jasmine Crockett, expand the electorate. What has Gary Chambers been saying till he's hoarse, including to you more times? If you expand the electorate in Louisiana, we're not arguing. Hey, come here. Who are you? You smart ass white boys, you consultants. All y'all bring your ass sitting right here and bring Jim Carville with you and Joe Scarborough and all the rest of you silly minded people and all you black political consultants who too scared to tell them the truth. Y'all ready? Here we go. I'm not chasing another toothless white voter. You can have them all. Why? Because I'm going to get the toothless white voter's toothless cousin. You know, the one whose uncle was sitting in the hall in 1988 or sitting on the TV saying, well, I'll be damned. Jesse's talking to me too. Yeah, it's 5 of them over there. You chasing this one over here with the Trump hat. And it blocked your view. Don't you remember Jesse Lewis Jackson in Appalachia with the coal miners? Don't you remember him with the migrant workers? Do you remember Jesse Jackson telling Walter Mondale there should be a woman on the ticket? There's no Geraldine Ferraro without Jackson's expanding the electric. So when Mike Brown said the political currency is voters. So in 84, it's like, what does he want? I want to be president. Time magazine, I got a copy of it here signed by Jesse Jackson. I didn't even think about it. I would have pulled it somewhere. I don't know where it is, probably in the other room. It's the cover of Time magazine with Jesse Jackson's face on it. And it says Jesse with an exclamation point and a question mark. As Jesse want to be president, it's like, you want to be president. Signed by Jesse Jackson. But in 88, now you got a problem. Jesse Jackson damn near the presumptive front runner. And then you got a MAGA Mike, not in terms of politics, not in terms of intellect or temperament, but in terms of appearance. You basically got a MAGA Mike Johnson running in terms of Michael Dukakis. Jesse Jackson, if he was a white man, it wouldn't have been, the primaries would have been over a week into the damn announcement, but he's black, but he's Jesse. Even hip hop artists, Melon Mel, remember Sugar Hill Records released Jesse. He's running. Jesse, let's talk about Jesse. Everybody, Jesse, but white people too. Latinos too, Asians too. You got a rainbow coalition. Man, the mayor of Burlington, Vermont, now Senator Bernie Sanders. Paul Wellstone out of Minneapolis, out of Minnesota, the Working Families Party. Oh, what have I heard? The Farmers Party, Working Family. Oh yeah, that's an iteration of what we now see with Mamdani and them. Because quietly as kept, Jesse Jackson kind of like, I don't know, a state capitalist, but he got socialists running, working for him and open communists. You got people like Jack Odell. We're going to talk about that in a second. So much we could talk about here. So Mamdani is taking a page out of that. So 88, Jackson. Now, mind you, I ain't even got to the foundation for 84 and 88. This is what I ain't seen nobody talk about this, except maybe some academics in some places, and they will talk about it. But today we're talking about it here, and we're in the obligation because there are people who come in here Saturday after Saturday or during the week between Saturdays and watch who are in those spaces. Many of them I hear from all the time. You hear from all the time. This is y'all obligation. I'm talking about you Negroes who own these platforms. Y'all need to go in there and mention 1972 Gary. If you don't know what it is, go look it up. I'm going to help you in a minute. But before we get to that, in 88, he's winning primaries. 17 states. He wins Michigan. We got a problem. South Carolina? Yeah, okay. Wait, Michigan? Yeah, you know how many Negroes in Detroit? Bet you know now. You know how many working class and poor whites, just enough inched with that to get? Now the next state is Illinois. Super Tuesday. Oh, we got to do something. This is where you see the newly formed DLC that Democratic leadership convergence, Democratic leadership committee. This Joe Biden, this Bill Clinton. These soft white nationalists. Yeah, Joe's a soft white nationalist. He's better than a fascist like Trump, but let's be crystal clear. And he's had a push leftward over the arc of his years. But the fear of the Voting Rights Act and all them Negroes that they registered, and between 84 and 88, what do you see? Oh my God, you get David Dinkins in New York. You get Doug Wilder. Doug Wilder, who's a Q. Doug Wilder is an Omega whose candidate lost an election, a national election to national office for a student representative to Jesse Jackson when they was all in school. But Doug Wilder becomes the governor of Virginia. That's because new voters have been registered with the Jackson campaign, have flooded the zone, and you've brought the political capital, the political currency of voters. There's also the economic capital. The economic capital you want to talk about is consumer power. We'll talk about that in a minute, because this is where Jackson is trying to fuse this thing together. This is the King vision. This is the SEL vision of Operation Breadbasket. That's why he's sent to Chicago. But let me finish the 88 point. Illinois is next. Man, he gonna be the nominee. Dukakis is not only beatable, he about to take this ass whipping. And we are so excited. I'll never forget. You know what them DLC boys did? Paul Simon, remember Paul Simon with the bow tie? And I said, and I think his daughter or somebody gave one of the bow ties to Barack Obama. Said, yeah, you're running. My father would have wanted you to have. Okay, yeah, okay. By the way, another person elected because of an expanded electorate, Senator Carol Moseley Braun, who's been talking about it all week. Again, this black woman in the Senate. Just the Jackson campaign's expanding the electorate. So here come the Illinois primary. Some of y'all already know what happened. Paul Simon had dropped out the race. He just dropped out the race. They convinced Paul Simon, these soft white nationalists in the Democratic Party, re-enter the race in Illinois, because you're the senator from Illinois, and that will stop Jesse Jackson from winning the primary. Simon re-enters the race. Jackson does not win Illinois. After the Super Tuesday, Paul Simon leaves the race again. Y'all not our friends, but guess what? Anybody intelligent knows that no politician is your friend. And remember what Jonathan Jackson said, his daddy is a minister, he's in religion, he's using politics as a means to an end, not the other way around. I don't trust no politician who's a politician first. I'm sorry, Hakeem Jeffries. The point is this. This is a movement that sees the two-party system as a delivery system for power. And until we can break the two-party system, you got to use party politics intelligently. The Democratic Party was the closest one to electoral capture by African people. So that's what we were using at the time. We was all ready to go to Atlanta. I told the story the other night, Roland Martin Unfiltered. We already go to Atlanta because we're going to tear up the Democratic Party. He going to be the nominee, or we going to know why. This thing got to be negotiated. Jackson, before the campaign, before the convention starts officially, releases his delegates to Dukakis. We're like, what the hell, Jesse? What the? You were young, mad. What the? Then we realize, Jesse done put all his people in place at the Democratic Party. Do you know who was around that table, that strategy table? You can't name them all, but he's got juniors, apprentices under him who he's bringing in to put places. Ask Donna Brazile how it went down. Yes, Rainbow Campaign. Ron Brown becomes the chair of the party. It's no Bill Clinton without that, without the triangulation strategy. And Ron Brown and they say to get Jesse to back off, to tear up the party, we're going to have some changes. One of them is going to be, if you come into a state and win 48% of the vote, and the other person won 52% of the vote, the person who won no longer gets 100% of the delegates in that primary. They get 52%, and you get 48%. You know who that gives birth to? Wait for it. You already know Barack Hussein Obama. Yeah, there's no Barack Obama without that rule change. Barack Obama in Iowa, Barack Obama in Massachusetts, Barack Obama, even if he loses to Hillary Clinton, he's losing by a few percentage points and he gets that share of the delegates. And then he's winning. And so he's racked up the delegates. And now those super delegates are like, we can't pull her over to her. We got to go. Oh, yes, we can. Oh, yes, we can. Keep hope alive. Which one of the two phrases going to last forever? Probably keep hope alive. Although, yes, we can is competitive. But David Plouffe and David Axelrod, y'all kidding on the best day of your life match Ron Walters and Ron Brown. You couldn't. because your little narrow white nationalist mind is trapped in the white nationalist formation of the criminal enterprise. These are global thinkers. They don't see the United States as the beginning and end of humanity. They see it as where I came out of my mother's womb, and until I make the connections to the rest of the world, we're going to make here as good as we can. And here come these poor white people and these migrant workers. Here come these people working at hotels, and here come these cops over here. Look at this lady over here who's busting her ass at the hospital. We're going to get everybody together, grow the electorate, and with this currency of voters, we're going to transform what we can here. This ain't the end all and be all of society. Listen to Jackson's '88 speech. So that was the next time. But I want to, I'm looking at the clock and I want to make sure we have time. So we talk about Jesse from South Carolina. We talk about Jesse coming through North Carolina. We talk about Jesse Jackson getting in the movement. We talk about Jesse Jackson meeting Martin Luther King and then getting involved in the protests and civil rights. And we see Jesse after 65, Voting Rights Act and expanding electorate. We see him in 68. This young firebrand, brilliant, part of the Brain Trust. We see him sent to Chicago and relocating where he spent the rest of his life as a base of operations, even though he was a shadow senator from Washington, D.C., if you can imagine that. Santito, of course, was a student at Howard University part of that time. And then we see Dr. King is killed. And what happens? That period, I would argue, that period between 1968 and 1972 or 3, that is the key point. It ain't the 88 campaign or the 84 campaign. It's the period between 68 and 72. What happens? That's the Black Power campaign. Y'all made me go into the archive. Most of my stuff's in storage, but these few things are not. And there are many more issues of this, but these are a few. And I'm going to mention them. Freedom Ways. This is a journal that I encourage everybody to get a hold of. I think that you can get digital. You can kind of find it out there floating around digitally. Freedom Ways was a journal that was started. You've heard me talk about this many times. I didn't pull the numbers in class, but if you go to the compendium, to the index, and you type in Jesse Jackson, or you type in Freedom Ways, or you type in Jack O'Dell, you will be able to see how many times we talked about a great deal of this stuff. But as we kind of begin to summarize some things, I want to take a few moments to talk about this. I mentioned the name Jack O'Dell, John Henry O'Dell. This is Freedom Ways from the second quarter of 1970. The work of the great Charles White on the cover. And as we've many times we talked about him, there's an article in here by J.H. Odell, Jack O'Dell, called The Contours of the Black Revolution in the 1970s. This is 1968. Dr. King was killed 2 years before this. Jack O'Dell was on the senior staff of SCLC. He was coaxed back to SCLC by Andrew Young and Dorothy Cotton, as I mentioned. This is after Dr. King was killed because they want to hold SCLC together. And when you read, if you want to read the work of Jack O'Dell, there's a book of his essays, his thoughts called Climbing Jacob's Ladder, the writings of Jack O'Dell. Nikhil Singh, Singh, Nikhil Pal Singh edited it. Jack O'Dell, who lived in Canada for many number of years, he made transition, I want to say during COVID. Shout out to Joni Eisenberg, who was very close with Jack O'Dell, his wife. And I think Mike Nasella's funeral is today, former engineer at WPFW, my brother, Red Eagle. So joined the ancestors a couple of weeks ago. But at any rate, Jack O'Dell, communist, people like Stanley Levison, they were very close with Dr. King. And of course, the FBI, the government, the Kennedys, y'all got to get rid of Jack O'Dell. We talked about Jack O'Dell. We talked about him extensively when he made transition. Go back through, look at the compendium, and I'll tell you, you can get the numbers when we talked about Jack O'Dell. Jack O'Dell, very close with Jesse Jackson. So O'Dell agrees to come back into SCLC, but then Jackson, with Operation Breadbasket, which they were sent, remember, the Operation Breadbasket is the economic arm of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And remember, Dr. King, near the end of his life, he's got a famous speech where he's talking about boycotting all these places, Seal Test Milk, and then he can't remember the name of the bread company. He's talking about, now we got to use our economic power. Remember, Mike Brown said there are two types of currency. Political currency is voters. Economic currency is consumers as target. The point is this. Dr. King gives his speech and he's saying, yeah, and we're going to boycott these people. And then there's one of these bread companies. Jesse, what's the name? And Jesse tells him the name. Yeah, that's Dr. King is right there with him. Now we're going to build up our political capital, our political currency with voters, and we're going to build up our economic capital with consumers. We're going to withdraw our money. In fact, that is the speech where Dr. King says the phrase that Farrakhan uses at the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March. It was the first time I met Roy Wood Jr. In fact, he interviewed me for Comedy Central, his little comic piece. You can go find that there somewhere. Roy asked, what's the Black National Anthem? And I said, lift your voice and sing. He said, oh, I thought it was summertime. And then I make this stink face. But at any rate, it was the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March. They had Roy Wood down there interviewing people going around the Capitol talking about the Million Man March. But the theme of that 20th anniversary was redistribute the pain. How quickly we forget. The whole idea was this the summertime, October, we're going to not spend any money at Christmas. Let's get our muscle. We're going to redistribute the pain. That's that word, that 3-word phrase. Keep hope alive, redistribute the pain. I am somebody. Something about them 3 words, Selma. Shelby killed Selma. Something about them 3 words. I guess we can remember that in the Idiocracy, or at least you put it, it's the horse of speech. Redistribute the pain. That's what Dr. King said at that speech with Jesse there. That's using your economic power. We're going to redistribute the pain. But Negroes like video games and cars and whatever their favorite food is too much. Although we have shown through the Target redistribution, we've redistributed the pain to Target. I don't know, we'll do it if Paramount comes in. They're killing CBS. They're going to kill CBS, of course, state media, regime media. They're going to kill HBO and all that and kill CNN. CNN already did. But the whole point is withdrawing your economic support is very important. King said that. King is dead. Jesse comes in with Operation Breadbasket, continuing to do that economic work. Where we're going to vote, where we're going to not vote with our dollars, where we're going to invest money. We're going to do Black-owned businesses. All that's part of the Operation Breadbasket playbook. And then Jesse, it's not going fast enough. So he launches People United to Save Humanity. Then eventually People United to Serve Humanity. But it's People United to Save Humanity, this charismatic country preacher. So, I got that album, The Country Preacher. I know about Cannonball Adderley. We'll come back to Cannonball in a moment. Why? Because this is the thinking of John Henry Odell, Jack Odell. He's all over these Freedom Ways pages. Let me show y'all a couple more, because Jesse recruits this elder who has been in this fight since the 40s, 50s, 60s, who advised Martin Luther King. This guy here is a super radical. I guarantee if you don't know Jack Odell, go look him up. I promise you. You read Jack Odell for an afternoon, you're going to be like, I'll be damned. I promise you as well, his name ain't never going to be mentioned on nothing in these tributes to Jesse Jackson. Because most of the people don't know him, and the ones that do ain't going to say it for fear of losing a job. This is communism. This is state capitalism, socialism, because Odell's a pragmatist as well. This is the anti-war effort. This is the determination to recognize Palestine as a state, not just because of the Palestinian plight, although that's huge. BB, international killer, saw you up there licking your chops at that funky ass peace board meeting y'all had. The international crime syndicate sitting there with Jared Kushner in his dead man suit saying nobody's going to profit. That's a lie, you punk. Y'all about to build y'all wealth if you can on the backs of the bones of the Palestinians. Peace summit. And then Bozo standing there talking about it's going to sit on top of the UN. Good luck as you continue to molt, as your hands wither and shrink. You're not going to be able to pull this off, my friend. But anyway, the point is that who is the first person on a national stage in a presidential campaign to say, I recognize Palestine should have a state? It's Jesse Lewis Jackson, which means it's Jack Odell. And all those people, including them SNCC people from the 60s who put it in their newsletter and then their funding dried up. As Ethel Minor had said. Y'all go back to in class if y'all don't know any of this story. But this is the Jesse they're not going to talk about. They're going to talk about 2 presidential runs, which were transformative. But you got to understand Jesse, you got to go back to the 60s and not just to that day at the Lorraine Motel, but the 4 years between 68 and 72. Jack Odell. Jack Odell is writing in Freedom Ways. And let me show you a couple more, and then we're gonna keep it going here. I don't want to get too caught up in this because I will, I could do this forever is talk about these pieces. But look at this here. Here's Jack Odell. This is in the 3rd quarter. This is 1973. This is the year after where I'm going to pause here for a few minutes. But this is important. Jack Odell is giving a kind of not a valedictory. He lived a long time, 50 years after this. He said, in praise of science on the progressive social inheritance of our movement's activists. So he's saying, to understand where we are now in 1973, you got to go back generations. He gives a history of this. This is an article I think everybody should read. Look who's on the cover. Do y'all recognize that guy right there? Do y'all recognize that guy right there? That's Cesar Chavez. Jesse Jackson been dealing with the migrant workers for years. How we talk about Jesse Jackson is going to frame how we think about the last at least four generations of Black movement in this country. This is what Jack O'Dell says in this article. After he goes through the history, putting it in a global context, beginning in the 16th century in Africa and Europe, coming through Du Bois, then talking about Bandung Conference, 1955, the year after Brown, and all those countries around the world that were going to shake off either going with Russia, the Soviet Union, or the United States and have the non-aligned movement. This is him. And Dr. Du Bois, who Jack O'Dell knew very well. He's talking about Woodson, Carnegie Woodson, Charles Westy, Wayford Logan, E. Franklin Frazier, Luther P. Jackson at Virginia State College, Albert Taylor and Clarence Bacot at Atlanta University and at Philander Smith. He's talking about the importance of HBCUs and training the intelligentsia that became the vanguard of the so-called civil rights movement. He goes through Charles Hamilton Houston, William Hasty, Thurgood Marshall, Howard Law School. This is what produced Jesse Jackson. And Jack O'Dell's giving you the genealogy, none of which will be discussed anywhere in commercial news, entertainment, media in terms of Jesse Jackson, and probably not very many conversations in digital media outside of this one. That's not true. It's going to be a lot of people talk about it, but they're not going to be talking about it in venues. And I feel it's that we have a responsibility, since thousands come here every week, to at least titillate you enough to say, let me go find out about the rest of this. Jack O'Dell goes through the era of McCarthyism, how the NAACP retreated. Jack O'Dell was involved with all these organizations, by the way, and how that compromise, that truce began to emerge. And then he goes into Dr. King. He puts him in the context of the Medical Committee for Human Rights, which is the black doctors. He talks about the National Committee of Black Lawyers, which is the lawyers. He talks about all the professionals who are still part of this Black Power formation. And then he gets into Operation PUSH. And then he talks about the demand for economic power, job training for Blacks and Puerto Ricans. He talks about skilled craft industry, construction industry in Chicago, Philadelphia. All this is pouring into Jesse Louis Jackson. And what he's giving you is a genealogy. Finally, he has a criticism. He says for this, he directs this to what he calls the cultural nationalist. It stings a little bit for me because I would probably be characterized as a cultural nationalist back during that periods. But I think those labels are overbearing. This is what he says, Jack O'Dell. He says, cultural nationalism has also isolated us from a certain progressive section of the white population, which are neither asleep nor reactionaries and need leadership. This represents a step backward from where Martin Luther King led us before he was assassinated. That's an astute observation. I'm never going to tone down my cultural grounding in Africana, but it doesn't mean I have to exclude other people. O'Dell is right about that. It shouldn't be that. In other words, in terms of coalition building, that Rainbow Coalition, which Jesse borrows after coming to Chicago from the Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton, who's assassinated with Mark Clark in 1969, from the Young Lords Party, which we associate often with New York, but when you see it up close, it's founded in Chicago. Oh, what's the sister out of New York that wrote the history of the Young Lords? We talked about it in the index. You can look it up. And it's the Young Patriots. We talked about them as well. I showed you the book by one of the former Young Patriots who's now elder. The Young Patriots are the poor whites in Chicago. That's the original Rainbow Coalition. I know everybody here knows it, but somebody doesn't know it, and they needed to hear that. Jesse borrows that from this. The Rainbow Coalition don't start with Jesse Jackson. Who in the hell gonna mention Fred Hampton on CNN? Huh? Abby Phillip? Anyway, point is this. I ain't mad at Abby. You know what I mean? Catch it straight, Abby. I ain't mad at you. What I'm saying is you got to do this. The genealogy is not just Jesse Jackson. He's the fulcrum behind him, along him. You see all the other stuff. The refracted light that you want to pour through Jesse Jackson came from somewhere else. It is the colors of the rainbow filtered through him and filtered through his blackness. Jesse with the afros, Jesse with the Africa, the big gold medallions, Jesse with the dashikis, Jesse at everybody's funeral. Everybody's funeral. Jesse Jackson standing at Jack Roosevelt Roberts' gravesite. Jesse Jackson who's saying that Jackie Robinson has stole home. He's at a place where referees are not allowed. His voice speaks to the universe. With Mama Rachel Robinson, now 104 there, with her afro. Just like she had that afro when she and her husband walked out at the World Series with that racist ass Bowie Coon standing there, and Jack Robinson in his early 50s with that white hair from the diabetes that would take his life, stands there at that last World Series with his wife and children and says, I'll be even happier when I see a black face over there managing in Major League Baseball. That's Jesse Jackson. He's not trying to hide who he is black. We're going to kind of circle around that in a second. But this is what he says at the end. He says, in the last several years, this is Jack O'Dell, we have seen both a substantial decline in racism among large sections of the white American population and at the same time efforts to rescue and revitalize this unscientific ideology by crystallizing it in new forms. This is 1973. You know what happened 2 years before that? Lewis Powell, that racist who ends up on the Supreme Court with the Bakke decision, which we're going to talk about that in a second. Powell over the Chamber of Commerce, as we've talked about when we talked about Project 2025 last year, apparently not to enough people, who writes that memorandum on capitalism and the attack on free enterprise in the United States and says we need think tanks, we need to have all these things. And out of that, the same 1973 Jack O'Dell is writing, this is when the Heritage Foundation was founded. And what happens? This racist cabal, still going strong with billionaire money, millionaire and billionaire money, pulls the existing think tanks like the American Enterprise Institute farther to the right. The AEI, which has been around since 1938, starts going away from academic and study work and going toward policymaking work and briefing work. Black folk try to put up a fight. They start the Joint Center for Political Studies, Political and Economic Studies initially. We want a think tank too. Except they get their money. Kenneth Clark starts it with Lewis Martin, and they get their money from the Ford Foundation. Jack O'Dell warned against that in the pages of Freedom Ways. He says, I'm watching this thing go toward grants, go to it, and think about where we are now. Some of these Negroes who know some of this history ain't going to open their mouth because they're worried about their grants right now. When Bozo's losing in the courts, and I don't care if the people take their money away from you. You know who else got money? Not as much as them, but it's more people than they have, which means you could probably make that up and exceed it, which is our model for Nubia and Knarrative, is the people. You can get your resources from each other. Ask Carter G. Woodson, ask the African people of the so-called civil rights movement. But after King is assassinated and the people start going toward the grants, the Joint Center, still doing great work. Of course. So I'm not criticizing them, but what I am saying, Jack O'Dell called it. He knew what was going to happen. And when this is being published, Freedom Ways by Shirley Graham Du Bois, John Henry Clark, Ernest Kaiser, and all of them, guess what? The Heritage Foundation getting its start because the racist Lewis Powell is like, they're attacking Christianity and free enterprise. We got to do something about it. And y'all millionaires need to get us money to create these think tanks. And then the American Enterprise Institute starts moving to the right too. They were always kind of right, but then they like, okay, we got to really get into this 10 toes down. They're better than the Heritage Foundation to this day, but still, the center of gravity gets pulled away. So now let me continue. The year before this, very important to understand. Remember, 68 to 72 window? The call for independent black politics is strong as hell. Dr. King been killed. Was it Jesse who said it? Somebody else said, when Dr. King got killed, y'all killed the best friend you ever had. You killed the best friend. In that same clip that's been circulating, Hosea Williams criticizing Jesse Jackson, he also says James Earl Ray didn't kill Martin Luther King any more than I killed him. He said it was a black dude, to say he went that way. What does that mean? He says some guy ran this way, got into a Mustang with Alabama plates and took off. It wasn't James Earl Ray. To this day, I don't believe. Of course he didn't kill. Of course he didn't kill Dr. King. You might find out who killed Dr. King if these Epstein files don't go away, because Bozo was throwing everything in the streets in order to save his ass, and he might give it up. Who knows? In fact, there's a new edition. I'll show it to you all because it's also a very valuable thing to have. If I can pull it. Yeah. This just came out. This is a condensed version of the Church Committee report, Revelations from the 1970s Investigation into the National Security State. It's a nice edited volume. It's got COINTELPRO in there, the Panthers, CIA, counterintelligence, warrantless electronic surveillance. It's a nice, it just came out. The Church Committee. It's cheap too. It's like $20, $22.99. But so the black political power movement is there. Dr. King been killed. So they said, we need an independent black political party. Jesse is down for it with everybody else. They call a meeting 1972 in Gary, Indiana. This is a copy of Black World, which you can go on Google Books and you can get them all. This is from October 1972, the National Convention in Gary, Indiana, the National Black Political Convention. And look at this, the black political situation in the 70s. Do you see Jesse? You see Jesse? You see Jesse there with Julian Bond, Shirley Chisholm, Richard Hatcher, the mayor of Gary, Indiana, Amir Baraka. This is it. In a minute, when we close, you're going to see a clip from Jesse Jackson speaking as the opening speaker for the 1972 Gary Political Convention. And the other night, Cliff Albright was saying this, both of us, Cliff and I were both saying this. When the history is written 50 years from now or whenever, or when we think about this, once we unblock our memory today, because it may not be a species in 50 years, as Bozo has sent half the damn military into Iran, giving nobody any reason for doing it. And even the damn New York Times, with its timid ass, said today in the op-ed page, let me see, 4, 3, 2. This is how an autocrat goes to war. Trump is not explaining to neither Congress or the public why he might bomb Iran. I'll tell you right now, because in them 3 million files they haven't released, is there a picture of some little girl sitting in your lap? This bozo, naked self-interest, and the rest of you timid punk-ass politicians, the white nasties, I ain't even thinking about them. I'm thinking about you, Schumer, you, Jeffries, and everybody else who's too timid to say what needs to be said. Anyway, so the point is this. 72, they're in Gary, Indiana. There's a book that's decent on the facts. Leonard Moore's book, The Defeat of Black Power, Civil Rights and the National Black Political Convention of 1972, is decent on this. There's Baraka at the podium. Betty Shabazz, Coretta Scott King. They're there at the opening. Jesse Jackson gives the opening speech. When we close in a few minutes, you're going to see Jackson's speech. This is the Jesse Jackson of 1972, and this is the Jesse Jackson that made transition this week. Black power was always at the center of his work, but it didn't exclude anybody else. At this convention, you had elected officials. At that time, you have a state senator who eventually becomes the mayor of Detroit, Coleman Young. You have all these, but Richard Hatcher and Carl Stokes, in Cleveland are the only 2 black mayors of major cities in this country in 1972. Fast forward 15 years later, the Jackson campaigns and all these people who have become registered to vote and come vote, you got black mayors all over the damn country, expanding the black city officials, black sheriffs, black city council people, black school board members, all of this coming out of this work. And not just locally, but globally. Go back and look at the Gary Convention. Listen to the speeches. Queen Mother Moore is there talking about reparations. Dick Gregory, Harry Belafonte, Sidney Poitier providing entertainment between the Jackson Five, because they from Gary. Of course, they got to perform, but I'm coming back to all them people in a minute. Because this 72 moment where they go out and organize and say, we got to expand the electorate, leads to an explosion of black elected officials. The Congressional Black Caucus, in its infancy in 1972, becomes a real thing in the 70s, 80s, 90s to this day. The leader who conceives it, Charles Diggs, has a new book called House of Diggs, talks about Congressman Diggs out of Detroit. A man on his staff named Randall Robinson, story for another day. We've talked about that before in class. Now you're going to have more colleagues. It's not just you from Detroit. It's not just you from Chicago. It's not just you from New York, is it, Adam Clayton Powell? Now you're expanding the electorate. Mervyn Dimely out of LA, you're expanding the electorate. And as you expand the electorate, you got more members of the Congressional Black Caucus, and they come in. Mickey Leland, they come in out of Texas. My man Ron Dellums, I'm looking over there because I'm thinking about his book. Ron Dellums out of the Bay Area. They're coming with politics. Many people, activists who become politicians. Jackson is not yet in politics, man. We even got to the thing itself. Then you talk about this from 72. Now let's talk about something else very quickly. It's so much we could talk about, but obviously we don't have time to talk about it all. Oh, what did I do with it? Come on, son. Here we go. This is Freedom Ways from 1971. Let's go back to a couple of years. This is just before Gary. Page 374 in this volume. This is Freedom Ways, 1971. Do any of y'all remember the Black Expo? Black Expo, Matrix of the Design for Unity. Jackson, Operation PUSH, Odell, the whole formation in this black ass city called Chicago. Let's pull all the entertainers, all the black businesses, all the celebrities into one place. And let's, in a moment of cultural meaning making, do it so compellingly that what we have marked is the essence of what now young people call black excellence. Do you understand? It's very important. So in 1972, the following year, this is the concept paper. Gary Political Convention 72. Watch this. This is what Jack Odell says. He says, by the way, he's an associate editor of Freedom Ways. He wrote this in October. He says, our movement has entered a very critical period in its life, as is true of the nation's history. The signs of crisis in American society are all around us, and the mass media daily remind us that, to say the least, all is not well. The ghettos of Afro-American imprisonment all across this country are faced with economic problems, growing unemployment, and permanent joblessness. It's before AI, especially for our youth, on a scale unequaled since the years of the Great Depression. So he goes through this and he's talking about how they mobilize. He said there are also to be mobilized some 470,000 Black college and university students, a majority of whom for the first time in history are attending colleges north and south in integrated situations. They're building toward the 1972 presidential election. This is where we're going to bring this plane in for a landing. Viewed upon this background of developing social and national crisis and of compelling challenge, Black Expo 71 is one of the most significant events of the civil human rights movement during the last 15 years. The theme, Harambe, this is 71's Black Expo. We're going to mention 72 in a minute, which is where you can see, if you go to Netflix now, crazily enough, hopefully after the white nationalist Ellison family with the skids greased for them, they get it. All that Black stuff may disappear. So you might want to figure out a way to do this. We'll come back. The 72 theme is Save the Children. 71 Black Expo, Operation PUSH, Jesse Jackson ain't gonna be talked about on CBS, MSNBC, MS Now, or whatever they call it. Nah. Operation PUSH's Black Expo. 71 is Harambe. Let's pull together. Kwanzaa. Yeah, don't get nervous. 72, Save the Children. There's a documentary called Save the Children on Netflix right now. The history of the 1972 Black Expo. Oh my God. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Let me come back to that. So I won't go much more with this, but I'm going to read this paragraph. He says, the theme Harambe, meaning coming together, met with a kind of outpouring by the Black community, which represents a qualitative leap in the search for the common bonds which unite us. More than 500,000 people from 23 states attended the third annual pilgrimage to Chicago dedicated to the memory of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Did you know that's where Black Expo came from? Happy birthday to you. We sing the song now. It's very nice. And Martin Luther King's birthday, we painting walls, picking up trash after we done paid our damn tax dollars to do that because we become a race of children because we have been so diseducated to understand that this is how we was marking Martin Luther King's birthday. All roads come to Chicago for the Black Expo. We continue. Odell writes, it was the largest of its kind, both in the numbers of people attending and in the cross-section of business, cultural, political, and sports figures who participated in the program for the event, from the more than 50,000 school children who filled the auditorium in the Chicago amphitheater to see live performance of Sesame Street, free of charge. No here. Next Friday, all roads lead to U Street, Lincoln Theater. There is the screening of Black Lions, Roman Wolves, Haile Garima, Street Garima. That's where I'm rocking my Sankofa. I'm going to be emceeing that night, and it's going to be a conversation with Haile Garima and his student, now master filmmaker, brother Bradford Young. And they tell me I'm going to be in it too. I just want to hear the two of them talk. Go to Sankofa.com, get your tickets. I think they've actually reduced price for the tickets and also sponsorships. If you could do sponsorships, even if you can't come, support them because they got debt to retire from this film. They're in Berlin right now, Haile and Shriek at the Berlin Film Festival. You go on YouTube, you can hear an interview with Haile from them, but y'all need to do this. This is how we support ourselves. It's self-determination. We continue. He says, to the convening of nationally prominent Black political leaders whose deliberations here in Chicago took a long stride toward charting the course for the 72 elections. That's going to lead to the Black Political Conference in Gary, and then the one in Little Rock a couple of years later. That's 1971. That's Jack Odell. They're laying the foundation. This is cultural meaning making. It's also movement and memory. How do we put a cultural floor under our politics? I suppose to kind of not amend, but to extend Brother Mike Brown's analysis. If the currency politically is voters and the currency economically is consumers, what is the currency culturally? It is consciousness, conscious people who have studied, who are grounded. When you see that documentary, it's going to make you weep open tears. I promise you. My favorite, and Marvin Gaye, because remember, the Vietnam War is still going on in 72 when the theme is Save the Children, Save the Babies. Oh, I can't even tell you all. Let me just give you a few of the people who are there at the Save the Children concert, which culminates after all these Black businesses, all these Black politicians. By the way, this film, you couldn't see it for 50 years. I'd seen clips. The only clip that I saw consistently besides Sammy Davis Jr. was Marvin Gaye singing What's Happening, Brother? With that Motown band backing him, Jim Jimerson and that Motown band. And he's at the piano. Hey, baby, what you know good? Just getting back, but you knew I would. War is hell. When will it end? When will we get back together again? Ain't got no job, my friend. Money is tighter than it's ever been. Hey man, I just don't understand what's going on across this land. Oh, what's happening, brother? I wanna know. Oh man, when you see it, and then in the montage, that Stan Lathan, yeah, that's Stan Lathan, produced in the film. Oh my God. You see the streets of Chicago, and then he pans the crowd, and you see these black people with afros, these black people with these leather jackets on. They all like Sammy Davis. Look, I'm gonna tell y'all some of the people were there. Isaac Hayes, Curtis Mayfield, Sammy Davis Jr., Clarence Avon, yeah, that Clarence Avon, Jackson 5, Bill Withers, Mavis Staples, the Staples Singers, Ramsey Lewis, yeah, that Ramsey Lewis, Roberta Flack. I'm just gonna let that simmer for a minute. Of course, Roberta Flack, Dick Gregory, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Ozzie Davis, Bill Russell, Close with Jackson, in the Black Power phase at the Black Expo, and he's on stage talking about Save the Children, Dick Gregory. Smokey Robinson's birthday was this week. Richard Roundtree, yes, Shaft was there. Willie Barrow, the gospel singer, talking about Harambe. This old school gospel singer on stage talking about Harambe. Y'all stop playing with black people. Albertino Walker. You can't have it without gospel. Jesse Jackson, the country preacher, after all. Quincy Jones, Jerry Iceman Butler, The Temptations, Main Ingredient, OJ's. It goes on and on, all in this concert. My man Roy Lewis, he, along with Jim Alexander, the two greatest living photographers, Sue Ross in that conversation too, took photos. We got to ask Roy from this time I see you, Roy. I'm like, Roy, tell me about that Black Expo. He's talked about it before, but I want to just linger for about 30 seconds on Sammy Davis. Because Sammy Davis hanging with the Rat Pack, Sammy Davis got all the Say the Babies, no question they were saying that. The whole point is that, when we say now, oh, well, black community is not a monolith, man, go to hell. No, I'm sorry, you've been driven to hell by your master. Don't be a slave without a master. Ain't nobody saying everybody got to be the same. But this isn't just a cultural celebration. This is just a business collection. This is a foundational grounding in a way, and showing ourselves our ways of knowing, regaining the momentum of memory, and then converting that when we need to convert it to politics through votes, through economics, through withholding our consumer power and giving it to the people. Support the brothers and not the others. You see them little buttons around there. Support the sisters. Come on now. We got to do that. And culturally, it's the consciousness being raised. Sammy Davis Jr. comes on stage. You'll see this in the documentary. Clearly, he's black, but also clearly he been hanging out with them white people. We got the white wife, and this is the kind of thing that social media has driven us crazy about. We canceling people and snow bunnies and blah, 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 blah. Sammy Davis Jr. stands there and he says to them, he says, quote, disagree, if you will, with my politics. And then you maybe hear a little stirring. He's on stage. He says, good, 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 good. But don't, he says, I will not allow, he says, anyone to take away the fact that I am black. Sammy Davis Jr. said, man, I give him credit for this. He says, and I can only add that it wasn't easy to come here, but trying to be a brother, it would have been very easy to avoid it, but I had to face this. Sammy Davis Jr. telling this crowd, all these thousands of black people in this black as hell thing, and you're a black man, but he know what y'all be saying. People are saying something from the audience. He says, it would have been very easy to avoid it, but I had to face this because, watch this, he says, because I knew that this is where it's happening. Huh. Because I knew that this is where it's happening. That this is where it's at. So if I take it, if you understand what I'm saying, and I know that the brothers in the audience can, then he pauses again. Somebody must have said something. And he said, well, try to. Because I have gone through some changes. I'm thinking about how Jesse Owens wrote, I Have Changed, his last memoir. They sent him in there in 68 to try to calm them Olympics athletes down, and they cussed him out, and he left out there crying. He says, I've changed. Black Think, another of his later memoirs. And then Sammy Davis says, I'm saying, and I know that the brothers in the audience will try to understand because I've gone through some changes, and that's it. Now, that's all I can say, except that I would like to sing if you would like me to sing. If you don't want me to sing, then I won't. And then you hear the people start cheering. Be honest, that's all. And what does he sing? I gotta be me. I gotta be me. He starts with, whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, whether I find a place in this world that never belong, I gotta be me. I give credit to him. Now look, y'all ain't gonna see none of this. None of this. Why? Because that would make, just like them signs in Philadelphia. No. We don't give a damn about y'all. We don't know about y'all governance structure. Y'all niggas to us. Let's put your faces on apes. Let's have some people defend it. I don't know, Stephen A. Smith, whoever, you know, cooning for the coining, maybe. Now I won't say cooning, coining. Get your coin, But my point is that we don't care nothing about all this. Who is Jesse to us? That's what a social structure thing would say. But we got to say who is Jesse to us from our governance foundation, and that will change and alter the trajectory of everything. Either album list. I got the double album somewhere, the PUSH double albums. They did the album, The Country Preacher with Cannonball Adderley, the Watt Stacks concert out there. They got an album on that. They did a documentary on that as well. I don't know what this world is coming to. That's in, of course, Public Enemy. Bring the noise. You see all that there. Brothers and sisters. He keeps saying that over and over again. Well, we're going to end with this. All of this momentum, which includes, by the way, Jesse talking to everybody. Remember I said the Heritage Foundation was created, and it pulls those other think tanks to the right, including the American Enterprise Institute, which I think I mentioned last week. This is their bicentennial volumes. This is the American Heritage the American Enterprise Institute, American Revolution, America's Role in the World, Natural Rights for Common Good in the American Revolution, Capitalism in the American Revolution, Religion in the American Revolution, Democracy in the American Revolution. They also got one, Slavery in the American Revolution. I didn't even insult y'all by showing that one. But where are publications of similar import? In fact, this is the Freedom Ways from 1976. Look at Jack O'Dell. This is his article, Paradise Lost, some observations directed toward the bicentennial of the U.S. As I was rereading these things and preparing for today, I said, we have a journal called The Compass, the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations. We have 3 volumes so far, very important work in there. We're going to make those widely available. You'll have to go through Sankofa to get them. And we're going to continue to publish. We're going to try to publish one on this so-called 250th anniversary. We'll probably do that shortly. But look, this is the American Enterprise Institute. This is from 1979, if memory serves me correctly. 78. This is what? This is 6 years before the Jackson campaign, 5 years before the thing I'm going to end with. And y'all know the name Robert Woodson. Robert Woodson, conservative kind of guy, hangs out with some of the right wingers as well. But black, just a different kind of black, like Sam Davis was saying. He invites Jesse Jackson to the American Enterprise Institution in 1978, 6 years after Gary PUSH is doing his thing at the Black Expos. Black Power wants to organize and get these voters, get the voting electorate expanded. Not just black voters, but again, putting together black economic, cultural, political power to enhance and maybe we're going to capture the Democratic Party. Watch this. This is a conversation with the Reverend Jesse Jackson, The Quest for Economic and Educational Parity, the American Enterprise Institute. This little pamphlet, there go Jesse with Robert Woodson. You're going to hear about this on Fox because it's kind of right-wing group here. Wait, no, they ain't going to talk about none of this. Jesse talked to everybody. What you hear Jesse Jr. say? Even in that press conference, he was like, I don't care what your politics are, left, right, up, down, everybody invited to these rituals. We're not going to do that. South Carolina said we want him to land state. I cuts no slack to no damn white nationalists, okay? And the MAGA Muppet, I respect you, little man, because you're a little man. You're going to be forgotten. You'll be forgotten from history today. Jesse Jackson's name will ring forever. Your name is going in the ground with your body. So this is the conversation with the Reverend Jesse Jackson. I mean, everybody's in this. They got Charmaine Hunter-Galt in here talking with him. Bob Woodson, he gives a few opening remarks, and then you got Ben Dudley from WHUR Radio. How would job programs as you see them differ from those that have existed in the past? You wind up with bottom-level jobs no matter who provides them, be it government or private industry. Jesse responds, first of all, one concern would be to have bottom-level jobs rather than no jobs as a base. A second concern would be to have vertical mobility as we aim for equity and parity with jobs. In his opening remarks, Jesse makes a distinction between freedom and equality. He's thinking about the economics. This is building on the momentum that he has been engaged in now for a generation. It's very important to understand this. He's asked about Cuba. He's asked about Bob Bates, Mobile Oil. This guy is with Mobile Oil. Bob Bates asked Jackson, he says, yesterday I heard you say that the Senate's proposal to provide arms in the Middle East was an effective way to maintain the balance of peace. Do you feel that same kind of policy, if applied to Southern Africa, that is provision of guns to both sides of the battle in Southern Africa, would indeed balance the peace in that part of the world? Jackson's like, oh, yes. I think we got two choices in South Africa, either disarm the white South Africans or arm the black ones. Watch out now. Charmaine Hunter Galt is asking him questions. I promise y'all, this thing ain't even 20 pages. It's 26 pages. You got to read what Jackson's thinking. You gonna reduce him to running for president? The hell out of here. Get the hell. Finally, let's end this. Let me bring this in for Atlanta. I said I was going to stop right here. And by the way, you all, let me just say this now for the people in Nubia on Monday night. Here we are. On Monday night, remember the homework. On Monday night, we're going to finish part 2 of Born in Blackness. We're going to do chapters 11, 12, and 13. So Born in Blackness, Monday night. If y'all haven't joined, you should join chapter 11, 12, and 13. Until the End of the World, Pathways of Resistance, and Becoming Creole. That's for Monday night. Everything's recorded, as is everything in Nubia. So you can look at everything once you're in Nubia. Once you join Knarrative and come into Nubia, you can see everything. So if you haven't been coming, come. You can still come right now. The conversation we had on Monday night, thank you all. That was so powerful, the conversation we had. Sister Imani, Sister Karima, it was, really something about going into Portugal, going into Brazil, seeing the connections. I was so transformative, really. So anyway, all right. So now let's bring this in for Atlanta. 1978, he's at the American Enterprise Institute. He goes everywhere. 1983, there's a congressman in Chicago. Congressman in Chicago named Harold Washington. Y'all know about Harold Washington. Hey, how's Harold? Another 3 words. Hey, how's Harold? They where I go in the world. Hey, how's Harold? They want Harold Washington to run for mayor of Chicago. Lou Palmer, my man Conrad Worrell, all these cats, Bob Starks, the whole brain trust. Chicago got this black brain trust. You need to, Larry Crow would walk you through the whole history, really. I wish Anderson Thompson had done this in written form before he made transition, but I got him on tape doing some of this. So Harold Washington said, I'm not running for mayor unless y'all go register a whole bunch of new voters. What did Mike Brown say? Political capital is voters. So they have this huge voter registration campaign, and he has a number. I forget what it is, 250,000, something like this. They get the people registered. They raise some money. He said, I'll run. Washington's running against Daley's son, Richard Daley's son. He ran against Jane Byrne. So Ted Kennedy and Walter Mondale decide they're going to come to Chicago. One of them endorses Byrne. One of them endorses Daley. That pisses Jesse off. That pisses all the black leadership off. Harold Washington, why y'all coming into Chicago interfering with our politics? So they put out an ad. It was a telegram signed by over 100 people. Coretta Scott King, Andrew Young. Hey, look, you white Democrats who take black Democrats for granted. This is what I'm saying about the Democrat Party, blah, blah, blah. Y'all opening y'all mouth, talking without any context. And so what comes out is like a child. It's cultivated ignorance, as we talk about this during the Blackest History Month. You got to know the history. We've always understood the tensions and the oppositional forces in the Democratic Party. These white Democrats, these your friends, right? Walter Mondale, right? Who Fannie Lou Hamer was like, yeah, whatever. And Ted Kennedy, the lion, Mr. Obamacare, I supported it before I died. Okay, fine. But in this case, you in here interfering in a mayoral election. Y'all trying to stop the first black mayor? What the hell? Or you just like these other candidates? Fine. So they take out a telegram. They say, we want y'all to stop interfering. And then they decide, this is what that ain't conversation people. We need somebody on the national level to begin to check some of this arrogance in this party and kind of give us some cover as we continue to build local political strength. This is the Gary philosophy. This is the King philosophy. This is get your local strength. Do it local. This is the Karen Hunter. How many times have you said that, bro? Get the local stuff. So, but we need somebody at the national level to give us some cover fire, like air support. So they try to convince Jesse Jackson to run for president. Jesse Jackson not interested in running for president. What did his son Jonathan say this week? The man is a preacher, but he's a national figure. He's our national figure. He talk, he pretty. It's like a Muhammad. If Muhammad Ali was a political heavyweight, he'd be Jeff. He's a preacher. Clay Evans, all them cats, man. Oh my God. So here's what happens. Jackson says, y'all can read interviews. Go out there. I'm not going to give you all the citations because we've talked about some of this before. We can talk about some of it next week. Jackson talks to Maynard Jackson. Why don't you run? Jackson is like, Maynard Jackson like, yeah, no, although I think you should run. I think somebody should run. Here approaches Andrew Young. Andy, why don't you run? No, I don't know if it's the right time. So Jesse Jackson, okay, F it. Y'all know why Jesse Jackson ran for president? Because Black people need somebody to step up. The rest, my friends, as we close, the rest is history. The rest is history. So next week, hope to see everybody. This time next week, I'm going to be in Atlanta. Friday night is the Sankofa Gala. So I'll be there. If you please, y'all, support Sankofa. If you can make it in person, come on down to U Street, to Lincoln Theater. It's going to be a hell of a time. If you got high school students in the DMV at 10 a.m. on this same Friday, a week from yesterday, there's a free screening of a part of Black Lions, Roman Wolves, Haile Garima's epic 10-hour history of the Italo-Ethiopian War in 5 parts. They're going to show a little bit of it in the daytime, and I think it's 7 o'clock at night. The gala starts. My sister, Yana Gregory, Dick Gregory's daughter, is going to be performing. A lot of other performers. It's going to be a conversation with Haile after the screening. But if you're a high school student or a high school teacher, and Dr. Wilkinson, Sister Courtney, you empty out Roosevelt High School, send them down there to U Street, to Lincoln Theater at 10 a.m., free screening, no cost. High school students, high school teachers, the Grimas have made we're going to show you about 30 minutes, maybe an hour of the film. So that's that. But at night it's coming. And then Saturday, this time next week, I'll be coming to you, inshallah, as the Muslims would say, Lord willing, as the Christians would say, from Atlanta, because the Malcolm X grassroots movement, the MXGM, is having its 35th anniversary in Atlanta, and I'm honored to be participating as one of the speakers. So Baba AK, Mama Aminata, all the folks down there, all the folks in the Malcolm X grassroots, I'm honored to join everybody next week. So I'll be coming from Atlanta. So that's it. So we'll pause from that. So I hope at least now we got some Jesse Jackson you ain't gonna see nowhere else.
Yes. And then yes, I'm sitting here taking notes. You dropping names that we've heard only here, but now you put it. It's almost like the dots are now connecting in a way that the picture is so clear. What we need to do next is so clear. There should be no excuses moving forward. The work has
no excuses. Can I ask you, because you were around, not for that, we ain't old enough for that, but you saw the aftermath of that in the city. All that, but Percy Sutton was there in 72. I mean, this is why, what's blocking us, Prof? From just, these dots are so close, they shouldn't even have to, it's not even stretch.
This very thing, I didn't know about the 4 horsemen. Of course, I knew Adam Clayton Powell, for obvious reasons. And, Black is beautiful, baby. We loved Adam Clayton Powell. And part of that charismatic leadership also kind of blinded us to the work that was being done, the Jack Odells, the people that were actually architecting everything. We focused on the beautiful ones and we missed the whole thing. So now you're putting it in perspective for us. There's no excuse.
No excuse. And there's still a few elders. My man, Tom Porter, who's here in the DC area, very, very close, best friends with Mary Baraka, very close with Jesse Jackson, was on the plane when they went to get Ron Goodman. There's still some elders around who can walk you through this history. So I'm just mentioning it here.
You dropped Clarence Avant, but his daughter is married to one of the CEOs of Netflix.
Wow. That's even a stronger reason. Don't let these Ellisons get hold.
Saying like there's stuff happening quietly as well that we need to pay attention to. We have these knee-jerk reactions to everything. Oh, boycott this. We hate this person. This person's, they did one thing. That's Sammy Davis. Thank you for that. Because it's real easy to stick somebody in that amber and put them to the side. But we need to extract all of the things so that we can move. None of us are perfect. Not a single person. And if you are, walk on water and then take us out of here, because it's time to come back.
Do you remember that? Was it Saturday Night Live where Jesse was saying he was on the boat with the Pope and the Pope's hat blew off into the water and he couldn't get it? So Jesse said, I walked across the water to get the Pope. And the next day the headline was Jesse Jackson can't swim. It's like,
Look, we're gonna lose a lot of things if we continue to do the work of the master to destroy and to, place these people in their view. Even that the Town thing, which you did not bring up, I played the Eddie Murphy Saturday Night Live.
yes.
I played that on the air, which I was sitting there. I was like, they let this go out on the airwaves. Oh my God. Like that was.
Could you spend 30 seconds on that? Because Eddie Murphy didn't have to do that. What do you think that was about? Just the politics of it. Because he wasn't clowning. Why would Eddie Murphy do that?
No, he wasn't. He was actually showing how, okay, we're going to demonize this man. We're going to do that when he's doing all of these things that Eddie Murphy did that. And not that they allowed him. I just want to say this, we're always thinking about what they're going to let us do. Somebody in the chat was like, how do we combat? Let's stop focusing on them, what they're going to do. And the more we do, it's unstoppable, right? If we're not thinking about what they will let us do as we sit and plan, well, they're not going to let us do that. Just do it.
Just do it.
The sheer force of the offense of that makes it unstoppable. If all
That's right.
Doing something, can they stop all of us? Can they stop you, me, everybody? No, they cannot.
One of the last things that Jesse Jackson did with his wife, with Jackie, and with Sanaa Lathan's father, who produced it, said, we got to get this film back. 50 years you couldn't see it. It will make you weep open tears when you wife say it. Because we did it already. All these black businesses. It's just, we could do. Ain't nobody. Holly used to always say that he would never name the filmmaker. He says a famous black Hollywood filmmaker. It's not Spike Lee. I'm just letting y'all know. And I know it's not Spike Lee because I know who he was. But he says, Holly was like, he approached him and said, man, you made Sam Cofer. He said, yeah. He said, they would never let me do that. Holly looked at him and said, I let myself. This is the whole point. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah. It's only our limited imagination that keeps us from doing more. It's only that. And our ability to complain and not do. If you spend more time worrying about this in your personal life, worrying about neighbor, family, and not putting your head down, doing what it is that you put here to do, you have wasted the good breath that God has given you.
No question. The people in the YouTube chat saying, bring your brick, Professor Karen Hunter. There it is. This is what we're doing. I love it. I love you. We let Jesse end it up. This Jesse speak. Remember, this is the opening night of the 72 Gary Convention. So it's Jesse sitting behind him, Betty Shabazz and Coretta Scott King together. Just letting y'all know. So this is Jesse.
Dr. Carr, keep talking.
Okay.
All right. I gotta share. Hold on. No.
Okay, take your time. No, yeah, just letting people know because, and again, there's a documentary called Nation Time. Actually, there's this DVD of it. I'm sure it's somewhere streaming, but I like to get the DVDs because when they turn off the electricity, I want to be able to see it. So it's called Nation Time. I think Nation Time 1972 or just Nation Time, which is a documentary on the 1972 Gary Political Convention. There are still people around. Ron Daniels still around, who was there. The great Ron Walters, Black Presidential Politics in America is the book that Dr. Ron Walters, chair of political science at Howard University for a number of years, and his colleagues came together. Because remember, black folk don't have a think tank like that. We still need to engender that thing. That's what you're doing with Eljoy. Of course, in Nubia, how do we build black political power? With Lurie, how do we build black political power? What she's doing at Medgar Evers. Well, the book that Dr. Walters, coming out of the campaigns of 84 and 88, publishes. It's called Black Presidential Politics in America. We've talked about that elsewhere if y'all go in the index and see. The book was published in 1988. So please understand the roadmap for, there we go. There's Miss Gary there. There's Richard Hatcher. There's Congressman Diggs. Directly behind him, you can see Betty Shabazz's head wrap. You can't see Coretta Scott King. This is Jesse closing out the first night of the National Black Political Agenda, where there was a black political agenda produced. So I'm going to mute myself and we'll let Jesse Lewis Jackson take us out. All right. Love you. See you all Monday night. Oh, well, no, see y'all tomorrow in Nubia, and then we'll continue from there.
Dr. Senyata, Dr. Narissa, Sundays we do that. We're also reading Sula. Dr. Daniel Black's popping back in. Monday, Born in Blackness with you. Tuesday, Dr. Mario Beatty, Meta Netcher, Coptic class. We are continuing to do all of the things. Aljoy hopefully will be back on Thursday. We're doing a civics lesson. Sam Reynolds, Consider Your Movement on Fridays. More coming, more coming, more coming, more coming. Of course, Systematics is coming back in March. Oh, there's so much
Yeah,
happening.
Systematics. Yeah, Systematics. Good. Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. The Malcolm X grassroots movement is older. It's the 35th Malcolm X commemorative banquet. So let me make sure I do that. This 35th banquet. So let me make, because the movement, some of the people who going to be there in Atlanta were here in this hall in Gary. Just letting y'all know, this ain't ancient history. I love you. I'm going to mute myself. We'll let Jesse Lewis Jackson take us out. And another piece you ain't going to see nowhere.
Ashe.
That has evolved as a result of our growing Black consciousness. Therefore, we are pregnant. We are ready for change. And whether a doctor is there or not, the water has broke, the blood has spilled, a new Black baby is going to be born. We left this place today, we would be derelict because we know who our parents are. We look at Muhammad Ali, Mahmoud Baraka, and Ralph Abernathy, and Angela Davis, and Minister Farrakhan, and Nikki Giovanni, Charles Hurst, Roy Wilkins, Roy Ennis, Queen Mother, and Preston Wilcox. We know who our parents are. Their baby has now been born. We are grown. We ain't taking it no more. No more yes about. No more bowing and scraping. We are 25 million strong. Cut us in or cut it out. It is a new ball game. There is a bomb in Gary today. That bomb lifts my Black family above the crucifixion by white racism, to live in the splendor of love and the comfort of mercy. There is a bomb that reaches down into the windows of my soul and assures me that one day Black men will sit in seats of power, rule with a sense of compassionate love. There is a bomb in Gary today, in Newark, in Fayette, in Richmond, in Pontiac, in Jackson, from the ashes of race hate, from corruption and economic desolate. There is a bomb today. That bomb is strong medicine, right down to the earth, right down to the root. It will humanize white politics. There is a bomb. It will radicalize Black politics. There is a bomb. We are a mighty nation. There is a bomb. In the name of Nat Turner, Sojourner Truth, Mary McLeod Bethune, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Martin King. What time is it? When we come together, what time is it? When we respect each other, what time is it? When we get our self-confidence, what time is it? When we form our own political party, what time is it? When we respect each other, what time is it? When we get our self-confidence, what time is it? When we form our own political party, what time is it?